10 box office bombs that bankrupted the studios. After being one of the most successful and acclaimed directors of the 1970s, Coppola bankrupted himself and couldn't direct another film for a while after this movie's financial disaster. This movie earned the Guinness World Record for the biggest flop that also ended one of the most successful studios of the 1980s. This movie spent the cost of the actual Titanic in order to build a replica of the Titanic. The project resulted in the sinking of the studio. These 10 films were not just financial failures, they bankrupted the studios that produced them and had a lasting effect on Hollywood afterward. Number 1. We're starting off with a shocker, one that seems impossible. It is really hard to imagine that one of the most beloved Christmas classics of all time was such a flop when it was first released that it bankrupted the studio. It's a Wonderful Life was directed by Frank Capra, who was a box office draw at the time. It also starred big star James Stewart. However, in order for the film to actually break even, it would have to gross $6 million. The film grossed $3.3 million. This might not seem like a lot in today's standards, but adjusted to 2025, it was a loss of over $50 million. The studio who produced it, Liberty Films, went bankrupt and was absorbed by Paramount Pictures. Also, Frank Capra's directing prowess was stained due to his perceived failure of the movie. The film didn't have a resurgence until the 1970s when TV stations could play the film as it was in the public domain. Nowadays, it is considered one of the greatest Christmas movies of all time. Number 2. This might actually be the biggest bomb to have ever bankrupted a studio. Coralco Pictures Incorporated was an American independent motion picture production company founded in 1976 by film investors Mario Kassar and Andrew G. Vanya. The company gained prominence in the 1980s and early 1990s with a series of blockbuster films including First Blood, Rambo First Blood Part 2, Total Recall, Terminator 2, Basic Instinct. Coralco's 1995 epic pirate movie Cutthroat Island cost the studio anywhere from $95 to $115 million to produce. When it was released, it only made a measly $16 million. That's a $100 million loss, which today in 2025 is $200 million. This caused the bankruptcy of Coralco and currently holds the world record for the biggest box office flop. Number 3. After Francis Ford Coppola had the success of The Godfather Part 1 and 2, The Conversation, and Apocalypse Now, Coppola decided that he would start the 1980s by dumping $27 million into an experimental musical called One from the Heart. The movie starred a group of no-named actors. The film follows a couple in Las Vegas who separate on their anniversary and embark on new romances over the course of a single night. For this movie, they built a real-life replica of Las Vegas and pioneered different visual techniques. When released on February 11th, 1982, it grossed approximately $637,000 at the box office, against a budget of $27 million. Calculated to inflation, that is a $90 million loss in 2025. This was such an L for Coppola that his own production studio Zoetrope that he originally started with George Lucas went bankrupt. However, over time the film has been reappraised by cinephile and critics. Coppola would also have another huge financial disaster with the movie Megalopolis in 2024. Megalopolis is actually a pile of garbage compared to One from the Heart. Number 4. You've probably never heard of this movie, but it is one of the greatest bombs of all time. Raise the Titanic was directed by Jerry Jameson, written by Adam Kennedy, and it is adapted from the book of the same name. The film was produced by ITC Entertainment, who spent $35 million on the budget. They had to spend $6 million on building a replica for the Titanic that they had to raise out of a big water tank inside the studio. Producer Lou Grade later remarked that it would be cheaper to lower the Atlantic. That probably would have been a better investment since the movie flopped so hard that ITC Entertainment had to sell its distribution in order to not sink like the Titanic. Raise the Titanic was released on August 1st, 1980 and grossed $7 million against its budget of $35 million. That's a $110 million loss in 2025. Yikes. Number 5. Sorcerer 1977, directed by William Friedkin, is one of the most underrated movies of all time. Sadly, it flopped hard because of a number of factors. William Friedkin was one of the hottest directors of the time with critical and financial successes like The French Connection and The Exorcist. The movie had no real box office draws in terms of actors. It starred Roy Scheider from Jaws fame, but the name was still not strong enough to draw crowds. William Friedkin originally had cast Steve McQueen as the lead, but due to scheduling and logistical issues, McQueen dropped dropped out. Due to the ballooning of the budget during the film's production, the film initially had a budget of $15 million, but then it went up to $22 million. The biggest factor to its flop would have been its release schedule. The film was released the same time as Star Wars 1977, which dwarfed Sorcerer's appeal to audiences. The film was originally received with mixed reactions from critics, which also stifled its success. When first released in movie theaters, it grossed $9 million worldwide. This was a $13 million loss, which is equivalent to $50 million in 2025. Paramount and Universal, who co-financed the film, wrote it off quickly. Sorcerer marked the beginning of the end for Friedkin's hot streak as a director. Studios were less willing to bankroll his bold visions after this. Number 6. At the end of the day, if there was a clear identifier for why this movie failed, was because the movie was too long. The Right Stuff is a great movie with a compelling high-stakes premise with a cast of stars like Ed Harris, Dennis Quaid, and Sham Shepard. Directed by Philip Kaufman, this film had a runtime of 192 minutes, which is 3 hours and 10 minutes. Even though this movie had widespread acclaim from critics and was nominated for 8 Oscars, it was still a box office bomb, grossing $21 million at the box office against a budget of $27 million. Which is approximately $20 million in 2025. The Ladd Company was hoping for financial success, but instead ended up leaving the studio behind, not to return as a result of this bomb. The film lost an equivalent of $20 million in 2025. People had a hard time sticking around for 3 hours to watch a space epic even over 40 years ago. Number 7. Not only did this film end the studio that produced it, the failure of this 1980 epic western was one of the most infamous box office disasters in movie history. Director Michael Cimino had won massive acclaim and Oscars for The Deer Hunter, which made Studio United artists confident in his ability to deliver another masterpiece. He was given total creative freedom to make Heaven's Gate, a western epic about class struggle between land barons and European immigrants in 1890s Wyoming. Production quickly spiraled out of control. Cimino was a perfectionist, reportedly demanding over 50 takes per shot. The original budget of $11 million ballooned to $44 million, which now would be $200 million. The film's runtime stretched over 5 hours, forcing United artists to demand cuts. When Heaven's Gate finally premiered in November 1980, it was panned by critics and pulled from theaters within a week. A shorter version was released in April of 1981, but the damage was done. It grossed only $3.5 million against its massive budget of $44 million. The failure bankrupted United Artists, which was considered one of the most prestigious studios. Number 8. Battlefield Earth is a piece of garbage. It is no surprise that this movie is widely regarded as one of the most infamous box office bombs and critical failures in Hollywood history. The screenplay, adapted from Scientology founder L. Ron Hubbard's 1982 sci-fi novel, was filmed with wooden dialogue, plot holes, and cheesy exposition. Critics and audiences alike panned the film for its laughable lines and overly simplistic characters. John Travolta, who also produced the film and was instrumental in bringing it to life, played the villain Turl with wild cartoonist exaggeration. His performance became a punchline, often cited as one of the worst of his career. Director Roger Christian's choices, such as excessive Dutch angles, low-budget looking effects, and awkward action sequences, gave the movie a clunky, amateurish feel, despite its $73 million budget. Although marketed as a mainstream sci-fi blockbuster, the film's ties to Scientology raised eyebrows. Many critics and viewers saw it as covert propaganda, which alienated general audiences. The film grossed only $29 million worldwide against its estimated $73 million budget. This $44 million loss is $80 million in 2025. Franchise Pictures, the studio behind the film, was sued for fraud after inflating production costs and eventually went bankrupt in 2004. Number 9. One of the grandest, most expensive historical epics of all time, and one of the biggest box office flops of the era. Despite its ambition, cast, and scale, it crashed hard. The Fall of the Roman Empire, 1964. The film had an astronomical budget for its time, $19 million, which would be over $100 million today. Lavish sets like the full-scale Roman Forum built in Spain and grand battle scenes pushed costs sky high, but didn't guarantee ticket sales. At over 3 hours long, audiences found it slow, heavy, and exhausting. The pacing dragged, especially compared to more action-driven epics of the time. While the supporting cast boasted names like Alec Alec Guinness, Sophia Loren, and Christopher Plummer. Lead actor Stephen Boyd lacked the star power or charisma to carry such a massive film. When released in 1964, it only grossed about $4.8 million, losing a fortune and severely damaging the reputation of producer Samuel Bronston. Bronston's production company went bankrupt shortly after. The film's failure marked the beginning of the end of the big-budget historical epic in Hollywood, at least until it was revived decades later with movies like Gladiator. Number 10. The ultimate cautionary tale of Hollywood excess. What was supposed to be a star-studded comedy turned into a legendary flop. Ishtar, 1987. Originally budgeted at $30 million, the production ballooned to over $50 million, a huge amount in the 1980s. Much of it was due to director Elaine May's perfectionism and costly on-location shooting in the Moroccan desert, including expensive rewrites and delays. The tone was all over the place. While Dustin Hoffman and Warren Beatty were huge stars, both were playing against type. Hoffman as a ladies' man and Beatty as an awkward one. Audiences didn't buy it, and the comedic chemistry fell flat. Before the film even came out, the media latched onto stories of chaos. Ishtar became a punchline before it was even released. When it finally hit theaters, reviews were harsh. It only grossed $14.3 million and was instantly labeled as one of the worst films ever made. It lost $36 million, which is equivalent to $95 million in 2025. Elaine May's directing career never recovered. Ishtar was her last directorial effort. Columbia Pictures management changed not long after the film's release, and Ishtar became symbolic of reckless studio spending.